So I'm a jewelry artist, and I think my work would be best described as industrial organic, because I like to kind of combine the two elements together. So there's always a hint, I think, of nature somewhere influenced, or, you know, spontaneous things happening, but it also has an industrial feel to it. Maybe a more masculine feel on some of the pieces. So when I'm making jewelry, I hand fabricate everything. So I can start from raw materials like sheet, wire, gemstones, and then sometimes I'll design something, draw it out and whatnot, or sometimes I'll get a vision in my head, even like the finished product kind of thing. So then I might saw out the shapes with a jeweler's saw, maybe pierce out some areas where there's cutouts, drill holes, file, sand, you know, do all that finishing work, maybe do the texturing. Yeah, it just depends on what I'm making. And then there might be soldering involved to connect things together, or if you're making a ring. And then after that, the finishing touches, setting a stone. There's so many steps involved. A lot of times I'll oxidize my piece so that it darkens the silver if I'm working with silver, which is my main material. And then highlighting the high spots just to really enhance the texture, give it more character, I guess. Yeah, and I work with silver mainly, but I also work with gold a bit, titanium, which is a reactive metal that you can anodize, and that the voltage, and like it's an electrical chemical process that determines what color it's going to change, which is pretty cool. And then I work also a bit with bronze, enamel on copper, so different things. I like to mix it up. Well, when I'm practicing my jewelry, I don't have a regular schedule. It depends on if I have a deadline, custom orders to attend to, or you know, different things where I'm entering a competition or something like that. Or if I'm just really in the mood to make jewelry, you know, try new things, just make a new body of work. Also, I'm a jewelry instructor at the Nêhiyawak Center here in Regina. So when I'm at that studio and I'm instructing students, and then there's a lot of work time where they are working on their own projects, so then I just utilize that time to also work on my own stuff when they don't need me, or when I'm not doing demonstrations. So it's kind of spontaneous when I do work. I have so many different things that inspire my jewelry or my creative, you know, flow. Sometimes it's just the nature of how the metal is working or moving. Like lately I've been doing a lot of fusing. So I'm using scraps of my silver, which I have tons of silver scrap, and I'm fusing them onto sheet metal. And then that, when it's melting in and partly melting or completely melting, and the different textures that come out, it's very spontaneous. So it's not like something you pre-plan. It kind of dictates how it's going to go on its own. And then from there, it might, you know, there might be a good area. Okay, a nice gemstone would look good in this area, or things like that. A lot of that would be oxidized too, to enhance the texture. So that kind of is how that style of jewelry evolves. But other things, I might even just be inspired by things in nature. I've been doing a lot of moth and butterfly jewelry, so just the intricateness of the wing structure and the colors. I've been using the titanium with those, just to mimic the colors of nature. And then I think, you know, even the fashion industry, or I don't know, it just could be, you know, sometimes, of course, looking at other jewelry, you know, from other artists, you can get different ideas too. You don't want to copy, but of course you're going to be influenced, just like the students might be influenced by my work. And then also, I think I'm influenced even by the students' work, because they'll have different approaches to the same technique. Well, at a very young age, at 5, I decided I wanted to become an artist. And it was more the process of creating that I really liked that zone, and I thought I would love to just do this as a vocation or whatever. I don't know if I thought of it in that depth, but I just really liked creating. I decided I wanted to become an artist. So throughout my childhood and early adulthood, I, did lots of different mediums, and like from sewing to drawing and painting, just building things and crafts, lots of different crafts, stained glass, whatever. Took a few workshops here and there, but the one medium that I thought was the most mysterious was metal and jewelry. It's like, well, how do they do that? And it felt like something that I couldn't teach myself, whereas the other mediums I kind of did. So at the age of 30, I decided to go to art school in Calgary and get my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in jewelry. So it was a 4-year program, and I loved it. Yeah, it was great. I grew up on a farm, and my dad was very ingenuitive, I guess you could say, building parts for the farm equipment. He had lathes, he had a wood lathe, and then he did, crafty things like willow furniture building, like wood bowls on the lathe. He built a boat, just different things, right? So I had access to, woodworking equipment and things like that. So that probably triggered, making things and being creative. When I'm making jewelry, I keep my notes, patterns, step-by-step instructions on how to do certain kinds of my jewelry, but say the stuff that's the more spontaneous fusing, I wouldn't even document anything about that really. So it just depends on which items I'm making, but I do have binders and binders full of jewelry designs and documentation, measurements, that kind of thing. If someone ordered something that I had made in the past, then I can refer to my notes to remake it instead of redesigning the whole thing from scratch. So I do a lot of documentation that way. My future goals as a jewelry artist is to promote my Etsy shop. So doing more online sales. I have a lot of inventory. I do consignment across Canada in different shops, but I like to move more towards the online market. And I'm really trying to establish my new Etsy. Well, it's not that new, but I've been adding a lot of new product this past year. So really promoting that and getting, I'm getting orders from all over the world. So just, increasing that to keep up with my production. Because I love making jewelry, so I just need to balance that out with more international sales, I would say. Yeah. I tell my students, practice, practice, practice. Just really perfect those techniques. And like the first technique I teach is sawing, and then a lot of them don't keep at it because they feel like they're not good at it, so they kind of work around not having to do it. But I just, practice sawing till you get it, because that's kind of your key, and you'll eventually learn to like it. Because I used to hate sawing myself, but now I really like it. It's almost like a Zen kind of moment when you're involved in your sawing out your shapes and patterns. So for online sales, I think one of the important things is to have really good quality photographs of the jewelry. That really helps you stand out in the crowd, I guess you could say. And then what I'm trying to do is, on a consistent basis, add new products regularly, just to keep fresh and keep, people interested in what you're doing. Focusing on what I'm really inspired by, or what's really, making me feel joyful when I'm creating, and that I think will stand out in the work. So those are kind of my strategies right now for my Etsy shop. The costs involved in making jewelry. Well, it helps if you have a home studio, which really lowers your overhead. Some things you can build yourself, like a jeweler's bench is your key area where you're going to be doing most of your work. And then buying the equipment and tools, it's a gradual process to build up what you need. You could buy maybe secondhand, would help out. But collecting basics and then working up from there depending on where you're going to focus. Building up your equipment, hand tools, flex shaft machine is very important. That's like an electric Dremel in a sense with a foot pedal. So you can do all sorts of drilling holes, sanding, stone setting, all sorts of things with that. And then you're going to need your raw materials, your silver sheet, silver wire, silver solder, of course gemstones. Like you can never have enough gemstones, right? So all those fun things that go into making jewelry. You know, it adds up, but you want to price your retail price to compensate for all of that. Plus, if it's being sold at a gallery, they're going to be taking 50%. So you want to have your wholesale costs. You're going to still be making a profit and covering all your overhead and cost of materials, plus your time you're putting in. So you have to keep all that into consideration. One of the things I always tell people is to always just wear eye protection, no matter what you're doing, hammering or sawing or drilling holes, soldering with the torch, just to protect your eyes so nothing flies in them or damages them. So that's the main safety thing I recommend. Maybe ventilation when you're soldering of some sort. But you know, all in all, it's a pretty safe practice. So these are one of my newest pieces, pair of earrings. And I just made these for fun because I was in that zone. And I took parts of some fused pieces of silver that I had, cut them so they're both about the same size. And then I soldered these rings on there. So I made these rings, soldered them shut, and then hammered them flat. And then I soldered them over top of these rectangles. And then I went ahead and cut out what was showing to make a round kind of hole. And then I soldered tubes onto the bottom that became stone settings, and these are a topaz. And the color on the metal is oxidized. So I left it in longer at the top and not quite as long at the bottom, just to get the variation in color. And then the rings were high or sanded back to get that high silver polish color. And then I even handmade the ear wires out of 20 gauge wire, I believe. And then added some jump rings just so they dangle, have nice movement. The light can reflect through the stone, and the stone kind of mimics the color of the oxidized metal too. So I love that kind of organic, like textured surface that's created by fusing. So I've been having a lot of fun with fusing on silver lately.